Welcome to Eudaimonia Podcast. It's time to tear shit down.
Don't cheat and look.
Alright, so this next question is interstellar religion?
Oh
Let's
boy.
take it off.
Well, I mean, it's a long shot, but I've heard, some of those theories about that some of them may actually have their own, almost more of a pantheistic, but still
Kind of like what?
science, like almost like a religion, but that actually reconciles science with it, seeing kind of the universe as the conscious being that.
Kind of like what Einstein was saying. He believed in pantheistic views, like kind of like a Buddhism almost.
If they have that level of technology that they do, that means they have a much deeper understanding about how quantum physics works, and have already unified unified the fields of physics, and understand exactly how to manipulate space and how and even like we briefly mentioned they could be hyperdimensional beings, making them almost like how Dr. Manhattan or the Silver Surfer are. They're a being that is transcended to the next dimension, where they actually perceive all of time as a singularity and have complete control over the physical three-dimensional environment. And these could be, something like that could be what possibly seeded life, what could have given humanity that extra push from apes to what we are now.
We're still apes, actually.
Well, primates,
Technically,
yes.
we are.
But and they, and maybe they've done that on other planets. So it could, some of the things that people see could be them, or they could be other, more advanced projects of theirs that have also stumbled across us. And that's where you get into the ancient alien stuff, where that the gods that ancient cultures talked about, as if like they know, they had come down and seen them, and how, especially how gold has been a big offering object in a lot of cultures, and gold would be actually it's the perfect material for building interstellar crafts out of, because it reflects radiation,
Which
and it's
gold is a very, very typical chemical, if you might say, that we add in like cell phones and all kinds of technology that we have, and silver is too.
and
Go
even
ahead.
something funny that's in the Bible, when it's talking about God making man and the Garden of Eden. Not only is God almost depicted as plural and having conversations with himself, it says that he made, they put.
You're the Holy Spirit. No, I'm the Holy Spirit. I'm the Holy Spirit. No, you're the Holy Spirit.
So-
Jesus, what's your take? I'm the same person that you are.
But anyway, it says that when they put the Garden of Eden, where it's going to start life, that it said between the Tigris and Euphrates River, and then it said because there was gold there. And when I was going over that, then like I was reading the Bible like more later in life, when I was actually trying to cross-examine it, and I'm like, why would it say that? Because that Adam and Eve had no use for gold. That was just another metal that happened to be in the ground that they walked on. And then you have a bunch of other cultures that put this, that have that idea of gold being like the godly, that from Egypt to Aztecs, Mayans, that was they would all offer the gold up. to the gods.
Mhm,
And they
yeah.
and there's stories of them coming down and taking the gold. And flying.
Peace out, bitches! I just robbed your ass. Where's your TV?
They eat this shit up. Like, just go down there with some glowy shit and then bow down. They will give you whatever you want.
They'll interbreed with you. Okay, so Brandon, interstellar religion.
Well, I was gonna say this as a joking point, but I don't think any organism could be as stupid as us to come up with a stupid religion. But assuming that there is some sort of worship going on, it's just based off of how complex the being is. If we're talking about organisms that are similar to that of illiterate Middle Eastern women 2,000 years ago, you're going to have some pretty messed up stuff. Whereas if the organisms we're talking about are similar to those that we see in China, it's going to be much more developed, much more reasonable. But I think really there's going to be very similar parallels between our religions and their religions. They're all going to have the creation myths and the possible morality if these animals are able to exercise moral standards.
Unless one of the 1,000 religions that is on Earth is correct and is universal or multiversal.
They just convert me.
You do have like the Nephilim that are talked about in Genesis, where it says that the angels came down and and they looked upon the daughters of men and came into and apparently that was the whole reason that God had destroyed the earth with the flood, because humanity's genome had been tainted, except Noah, who remained pure in generation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he's only 900 some years old though, because #logic.
So my take on interstellar religion is that I think there very well could be interstellar religion. If they're traveling around, they might start thinking, okay, no, my religion is incorrect. But who knows? We don't know what their religion is. For all we know, it could be Islam. But
I still see it as just being more of being at one with the universe.
Yeah.
Yeah, if it's more of a spiritual, there's nothing wrong with being spiritual or experiencing self-transcendence. It's this idea that there is a sky daddy watching over your every move.
Definitely, yeah.
And he's concerned about what position you're having sex in and all that stupid shit.
Well, maybe in their interstellar religion they have a better idea on it and they're more intellectual. But bleh.
We'll never know until we talk to them.
9! So if there is interstellar religion or whatever, or if we do make it out into space or all that, could we keep our own religion if we found other intellectual beings or other beings at all? Seth, go on.
I really doubt it. I think at the very most it would be more like realizing that that's where all these religions came from, and if you could understand then that maybe that idea of God came from that, the unified consciousness of the universe, being this, almost like transcendent consciousness that, all we all are is just that consciousness that's split off and is experiencing itself.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. So, Brandon, do you think we could keep our religion if we find other aliens?
No way. Well, let's just use Christianity because it's the easiest, it's the one I know the most about, even though I really don't know that much compared to some people. But if you take the Bible literally, you're a fundamentalist. The Bible says that the only living beings are here on Earth. He created other planets and other stars, but he only created life here. So if you're going to really evaluate your religion, you cannot, based off that evidence right there, you cannot keep it, because then, but the Christians always going to find some way to find a loophole around that.
Definitely.
Well,
They're gonna
and,
say
and they're
they're-
going to try and match their beliefs to what is found. So they're just going to like reinterpret shit
That or they're
as they
just going to
always
say
do.
that they're demons that are.
Yeah, well, like Ken Ham said. You guys know who Ken Ham
Yeah.
is?
Yes, definitely.
If there are aliens, we should not waste our money or time looking to find them because they're all godless sodomites.
Wow.
Wow,
He actually said that.
interesting.
I
Wow.
mean, he does make some good points in some
Yes,
of his
he
stuff.
does.
Because
But-
I have actually seen
Yeah.
some of his stuff. But
Yeah.
He always
he's-
says, "Well, I've got a book," and that's not an argument. But
Yeah, that is
I know this is
very
really
terrible.
off topic, but right now Ken Ham, of course, is in charge of the Creation Museum in Kentucky, and right now he's he's trying he's trying to build a Noah's Ark, and he
Oh, yeah,
needs
yeah.
subsidies from the state of Kentucky, about 18 million, and the state's not going to give it to him because it's Ken Ham says it's a public service to the state, and he says, well, since they're not going to give us money, then they're being discriminatory against our religion.
Mhm.
That's
And-
not how that works.
See, that's why my brain hurts every time I hear these guys talk. 'Cause
Yeah.
It's just so stupid.
Yeah, I mean, he does have some good points, like Seth said. Do I believe them? Not really, no.
I mean, I say at the very least, he punches some good holes in, the classic Darwinian theory of evolution that, and
Though-
as we said, and we're all at least in agreement that a lot of what we're taught in school is bullshit, and and there's even parts of that should at least be revised, not to the same ends that he would. But
Yeah.
there's still a lot of stuff that's still taught that's been discredited.
And another thing about the Darwinian theory, some of Darwin's stuff, they actually found evidence against some of his stuff, but he opened the doorways to evolution.
Yeah, he wasn't the
and-
one
that's-
to find everything about his theory. He was the one that's like, hey, I've got an idea. I'm going to try and find some things, but you guys are going to have to iron out the details
Exactly.
and
Well,
stuff.
because at least that's what separates science from religion is, science can be like, okay, this is what I see, this is a conclusion that I draw from it.
Exactly.
May or may not be right. More evidence comes in later and like, okay, well, we need to revise this. And then, while religion is like, don't listen to anything that points you away from what we're telling you.
Mhm.
But sometimes people in the scientific community can be guilty of that too, to where
Yeah,
they try
it
to
does
block out
happen.
things that throw a monkey wrench into the theory that they're working on.
Definitely.
Sometimes in science, I think we appeal too much to authority. So we hear some big scientist tell us something, and we're just like, "Well, since this really smart man, has a lot of credibility. I'm going to believe everything he says." That's just not a good thing to do, because if you just listen to whatever someone tells you, you're never going to learn anything.
Yeah.
You're just going to have a bunch of dogmatic beliefs. They may be true, but you wouldn't know internally.
Well,
But
do you know where I would be if I just listened to all? Because the things that I look into, you got people like Alex Jones,
Oh my
David
gosh.
Icke,
Glenn Beck, Rush
Michael
Limbaugh.
Moore. See, they're all. You kind of have to, take the source and examine it,
Yeah.
because there's a lot of those people that actually do have some good ideas.
Yeah.
But you need to take all.
They also have some bad ideas too.
Yeah,
But it doesn't
so
mean
you-
that all their ideas are bad. They have,
But as you said, you want to listen to everything
Definitely. Yeah.
and try to figure out what makes sense.
Definitely. So the next question is: would there be new interstellar religion based off of galactic or universal concept of space and exploration of what we can't understand about it? Kind of like the God of the Gaps theory. Could there be a new religion based off of some things that we don't know because it doesn't fit with their religion, but they make a whole new religion other than that? Go ahead, Seth.
Like I said, I think they, as more transcendent beings than us, would be more able to adapt their belief system according to just the evidence that they find and what they understand about the universe. I think it's more there rather than trying to take your religion and put that and look through that at the universe. You should be more looking at they would be better at looking at everything that's in the universe and unifying that into their philosophy.
So, Brandon, would you think that there could be a new interstellar religion based off something that they find?
That's kind of a tough question. I've never really spent much time examining that. I've never really thought of that. Anything's possible, I guess.
Yes, definitely. So, I mean, I guess there could be a new interstellar religion. However, I too agree that there's probably more than likely no chance about that. However, that brings me to my next question, which does kind of correlate with this kind of stuff. How about something similar to Halo? As a religious aspect, because
that
they made a whole new religion
Oh, yeah.
based off of the halos around the galaxy. So what
Can I
do you
actually
think?
go ahead and like just preface this so people who don't know what Halo
Yeah, sure. Go ahead, Brandon.
Okay.
Forerunners.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm sure these guys have been around. These guys have been around video games a lot longer than I have, and they've played Halo before I have. Because I've only been playing Halo for 5 or 6 years now. But so the story goes is that there's these Forerunners, and they had this very developed society, and there was this plague or virus known as what we in the game is called the Flood, which is a parasitic being that basically envelops the body, takes control over its motor abilities, and it can take down entire planets. So in response to this, the Forerunners built these Halo-like objects that are basically a space system that, if they're activated, can destroy all life in the galaxy, so that the Flood can't harvest other planets. So, thousands and thousands of years later, you have this alien group known as the Covenant, which is a bunch of different races from other planets that have essentially come together under a group of prophets who are spreading this religion known as, they refer to as the Great Journey. And the way to achieve this is you have to detonate the Halo rings, and it'll send you into this spiritual realm where
Sounds like the Armageddon or something.
yeah. So and basically the humans realize that the Halo rays are actually weapons, and they're trying to stop the Covenant from detonating them, because religious dogma makes you do some crazy shit.
Definitely.
I think it's kind of funny too that the Master Halo is called the Ark, and
Yeah.
protect humanity
Ark of the
against
Covenant.
the Flood.
Yeah, I actually did a speech on this past semester, where I saw there was religious parallels between like Master Chief. There's a thing in the Bible, a passage in the Bible that says, "I will make a covenant with you so that no longer a flood can destroy the earth."
Mm-hmm.
Like parallel, left and right. And I don't know if
Yeah,
you guys
yeah,
have
yeah.
ever seen on Master Chief's, he has that laser weapon that he fires.
Mhm.
Is in Halo 3, I remember. But there's a symbol on the side of it, and it actually links itself to Norse mythology, the symbol. So Master Chief himself is almost like a god figure. So yeah.
Yeah.
And his their armor is actually called the Mjolnir
Mjolnir,
armor.
yeah.
Yeah, and another thing that the Covenant does, it's very similar to any of the movements that happened on Earth, like the Crusades, the Inquisition, Hamas, Al Qaeda,
When they keep
ISIS.
they always refer to Master Chief as the
The
he's
heretic. No,
the
the
demon.
demon.
The Arbiter was the heretic.
Yes, that's
Yeah.
right.
Heretic,
And
I'll never forget that part.
yeah, I remember that. So stupid little grunts. Anyways, basically, if you do not join their religion, they will kill you, and that's why they want to kill the human race.
Well, they also see them as almost a mockery of the Forerunners.
Mhm.
which-
Yeah, because the Forerunners
Spoilers.
are revered by the Covenant as gods.
But spoiler alert, apparently, humans are like they're descendants of Forerunners. I forget if they said they were ones that were just like left behind on Earth, or if they're.
I thought they were
or at
actually
least
two
they're
separate
already created
beings.
by
I don't
them.
know. I can't remember.
But there was
There's a lot of lore.
There was some significance to humanity versus all the other aliens.
Definitely. So we'll go to our next question here. what do you think we would find first? Intellectual beings or microbial beings? Or maybe something in between?
Well, I think, exploring, within our own solar system, just what we have the ability to go find, we would much more likely to just find microbial beings on our own. But I think a higher being would be the one to actually contact us first, if they
exactly,
haven't already, or could even be the ones that, started humanity in the first place.
Yeah, definitely. And Brandon, what do you think?
Well, I think it goes back to the whole mathematical probability. What's more probable, a bunch of complex beings or a lot of small, unintelligent ones?
Very true. That is very true. I never thought about that.
I think it basically, assuming aliens exist, it comes down to probability.
Yes.
And it comes down, if the complex beings were 1,000 times more complex than we are, then I might think that, hey, they might find us first, because they might have some ability to track us down easier than we are able to do for them.
Definitely.
That's only possible way I can see it.
Okay, so that was actually a really quick one, and I kind of like that because I like both sides of that, and I mean, even though they're very similar, I definitely agree with those. Well, what about this question? Intellectual microbial beings. Seth, go ahead.
Huh. Never really thought of that. If they would, it would maybe be more of like a hive mind type thing. If it would, because it would be really hard to actually make something as complex as a human brain just out of cellular organelles.
Definitely.
But maybe if you had a whole bunch of them that made their own network, and kind of formed into one mass organism.
Now, there is actually a video game called Pikmin. I don't know if you guys are aware of this video game.
Oh, yeah, it's a long
Heard
time.
of it, played like 10 minutes of it.
Okay, basically Pikmin is these tiny little I know this isn't microbial, but they're tiny little organisms that are running around about an inch tall or so, and you throw the Pikmin, like, you are also around an inch tall, and you throw the Pikmin at these beasts. Well, to us, they'd be more like a few inches high.
Frogs.
Yeah. So, anyways, Brandon, what do you think about intellectual microbial beings?
Well, first off, I think we have to decide how are we going to define intellectual? Is it their ability to do math? Is it their ability to survive in harsh environments? How are we going to define their intellectual ability? So I think we'd have to define it as their ability to survive through different conditions, and their ability to, like, how far up are they on the food chain. So
Definitely.
I mean, that's a really tough question to answer. I'm not a neuroscientist or anything, but
All right. So yeah, I agree with both sides of those. I just threw that one in because I just kind of thought about that at the last minute. I'm like, wow, that would actually be kind of interesting if it could develop like that. And
something like that would just, their intelligence would evolve very differently.
Yes,
yeah,
definitely.
it's not going to follow the same lines of human evolution or
not at all.
Earthly evolution.
But I mean, that's the whole point. Is evolution could take place completely, drastically different on a different planet, or even in space itself.
It might not even happen. You may not even have the resources or the adaptations available to do that.
Though again, all of the chemistry that we need to make beings comes from stars, so it could very well easily be throughout our entire.
It's plausible. But,
yes, very plausible. But of course, like you said, it's not like proven or anything like that. So, what sizes could these intellectual beings be? Like, how big or small could they be? Seth, go ahead.
That really depends just on their, on their environment, because a high gravity environment versus a low gravity environment would have a lot of impact on just the physiology of a creature. I mean, if we're talking probability and all the ones that may exist, whether we ever find them or not, there could be a few that are gigantic and some that are
Definitely.
Be really, really small. But I mean, I think there is, at least in most cases that I can think of anyway, there's limits on how big an organism can get
Yes.
and still thrive. Like
Though
on Earth, you can't really get a creature that's, especially a warm-blooded creature, can only be so big before its core heat cooks it to death.
Though again, you've got to always remember evolution could take course a completely different way. Maybe they're
But we have no example of evolution happening any other way, so we don't know how
Yes,
many different
exactly,
ways it could
yeah.
happen.
Because like I said, something that would be, say if there was something that was 10 times the size of a blue whale, would have to have a vastly different environment.
Yeah,
Definitely,
exactly.
All right, Brandon, what do you think about that? Intellectual beings, how big could they be?
Well, I think you have to look at, for this, the only way we can look at it is through Darwinian evolution.
Mm-hmm.
So, with that in mind, every animal is going to be subjugated to different environments. So, whatever size is best for that environment, that animal or creature is going to have to adapt to that. So, with that, I think since there's so many different environments, you're going to get a good mix of small and large. But I don't think we're going to see creatures that are like a mile long or
Definitely, yeah.
it's just
Yeah.
it's really kind of unreasonable to think about that unless somehow the environment allows that animal to adapt to that.
Definitely.
Exactly.
Okay, so this is starting to get into a field that Seth will really like to talk about here. This is there's only three questions left of of my picked questions, and then we'll get to the social media questions, and those should go by hopefully quickly. The size of a multiverse being. Well, how big could something outside of our universe, our own universe, be if the multiverse exists?
Well,
Seth, go ahead.
that's kind of, when you're getting into multiverse theory, then you're getting outside, the description of physical size. That kind of size becomes meaningless, unless it's something that it would have to take its own physical form to manifest in our dimension, in which case it could make it as big or small as it wanted.
Mm-hmm.
Now, but it would also be something that, it would be existing through, way more layers of existence than we would, so maybe if you're going to think about it that way,
Yeah, all right. So you're a crazy. No, that's a very very
that's
logical.
going to get into very difficult to explain territory.
Yeah,
or even
exactly.
or even to comprehend.
That's the best kinds of territory that I love. Brandon, go ahead. What about how big do you think a multiverse being could be?
So, before I answer this, I want to ask what exactly a multiverse is. I think I have an idea. It's where you have like a universe, and then it's part of a bigger.
Yes.
So that's
basically there's a few theories on multiverse. Now we don't have any proven facts on a multiverse. So basically, the multiverse it could be like our own. There could be a lot of these universes, and how the multiverse itself possibly would be affected. We could be a molecule in a water droplet of the multiverse. So how do you think beings would be in that multiverse?
Well, I'm going to go back to kind of what I said earlier, that whatever characteristics of that animal, it's going to have to benefit them in some way.
Definitely.
So
now there could possibly be no evolution inside of the multiverse because it could be a completely different.
It's going into unknown,
exactly
untestable territory. So all we have right now is what we have on Earth.
Right now.
Yeah.
In the multiverse, they're saying that goes outside the realms of time and space.
Yeah.
So
it's not something that you can legitimately say like we understand how this works.
Exactly,
And we
yep.
have printed material and empirical evidence that show that
Mm-hmm.
I think they would be something, as I said earlier, something more like Dr. Manhattan or Silver Surfer. And they, you could maybe describe their size as more like how many dimensions they can go through as a video that I recommend is it's called Imagining the 10th Dimension. I forget who it's by, but it's like a 10-minute video that just describes the theory of going from, one dimension is a line, two dimensions is, two-dimensional shapes and stuff, and we are in the third dimension, but we exist on the fourth dimension, which would be time, and that's just the sequence that we can only see the three-dimensional cross sections of the duration that this matter goes through, and it could, and there's also possible branches that it could take into different timelines. Then you have until you get all the way up to the 10th dimension, which is where which is just that singularity that contains all possible beginnings with all possible paths to all possible ends of all possible configurations of matter in
So it's
the
like
universe.
the basic definition of an infinity of possibilities.
Yes, definitely.
And maybe there could be some kind of being. I wouldn't want to call it an organism because that's more like on a physical level, but some kind of conscious being that could exist on higher planes of that, and there could even be levels of them.
Okay, so now this is going back into our own universe here. Do you think aliens have ever visited Earth? Go ahead, Seth.
Again, I think it's you can also define what you mean by aliens, because there's the
Illegal aliens.
Those darn Mexicans coming over and taking our jobs.
But there's the interdimensional ones that I think would be the most likely candidate to be the ones that actually seeded a planet with life, and maybe even the ones that manipulated primate DNA to something that has actually become too intelligent for our own good. And, I mean, there's plenty of things about things that ancient cultures have.
Definitely,
Knowledge that if history as it's taught in schools is true, there's no way that they should have this access to this kind of knowledge, which means they either there's been way more advanced civilizations in the past that we just don't recognize, or they could have actually been taught by something that came to Earth.
And there's actually a religion in Egypt that actually thinks, we're not sure if this is true or if they're just claiming bullshit like most other religions do. They say that they saw a star, and they say that's the star that our gods came from. And this is what their solar system looks like.
In principle, that's kind of true, but looking at a particular star, that's impossible because that star would have to have be a supernova,
unless
explode. For
yeah,
that to be rational.
Unless the god came from that solar system, and then they said, that's my star right there, that's where I came from, and told them that that's where it came from.
It's a nice thought as long as you're not killing people.
Yeah, exactly. But for all we know, we could have discovered it, and then they said, oh yeah, that's the one.
Because I think I've heard what you're talking about, and I've heard it argued both ways. I forget the details, but someone actually did try to say that they didn't completely come up with it on their own. It was more some interjection from a European that was they had a religion, and then I think he almost led them to that conclusion, and it was they didn't come up with that on their own.
All right, so I know this is the last question of my picks, and I know you wanted to probably touch base more on this, but of course I had to throw this in here. Maybe they have visited us, even despite like a lot of the lack of evidence that we have. Maybe they are interdimensional aliens. Go ahead, Seth.
Well, there's people like Terence McKenna, who is he's huge into studying shamanic rituals and the spiritual beings that shamans have supposedly been communicating with.
Mm-hmm.
And he's into things like hallucinogens, that things like psilocybin, DMT, that what shamans believe put you in like the dream realm, or non-ordinary reality, they call it sometimes, or and there's beings that, like certain archetypes that actually pop up among things that shamans will see in these visions they get. That there's similar archetypes that pop up in different cultures that had no communication with each other, and people that have had some crazy experiences with some kind of what they perceive as a higher being speaking to them in one of these visions, and like Terrence McKenna, he calls them the machine elves of hyperspace, which is kind of a weird name, but he believes that they are actually also connected with UFO phenomena and extraterrestrials, and even why there's a lot of similarities in people's descriptions of UFO abductions. There's similarities in that to DMT trips and out-of-body experiences and astral projection, things like that, where people feel like they've just left their body and they see themselves going through a tunnel with the light at the end, and
all right.
like, sparing the details, I know what they're talking about. I have seen this firsthand, and I will say I actually saw, I didn't even know until afterwards, but in an experience with an unnamed substance, I saw what I later learned was the goddess Lilith that shows up in a lot of shows up in a lot of cultures. Which it wasn't until I was describing what I saw, someone else was like, "That was Lilith," because it looked like a woman's head on a body that was like a tangle of human bodies all together into one, and there was snakes slithering in and around her, and the snakes were all baring their fangs at me, but yet Lilith had this really peaceful look on her face, and I felt calmed by it, even though there was a rational part of my mind saying this should be scaring the shit out of me. But as it turns out, Lilith is kind of like, one of her archetypes is like the goddess of life and death, and healing and death, and why her one of her animals is the snake, which has also been used as having the duality of both death and healing, and she's and she's seen as one of the original goddesses in some of the original pantheons of some of the first cultures.
All right, so Brandon, what do you think?
I've got no comment.
No interdimensional beings, I guess. I don't know. So my take on interdimensional being aliens. I think that most likely, if any of these ghost happenings or anything like that, or angels or whatever, any of these interpretations, I think most likely it would be interdimensional aliens, or beings, I should say. The only reason is because it makes way more sense than a supernatural entity. So now on to our social media questions. Before we get to that, anybody want to say anything about any of the questions whatsoever that we've discussed?
So, interesting questions. Half of them I've never even heard of, like even the idea of it.
We'll take a quick break, and then we'll have your social media questions. You are listening to the Eudaimonia Podcast. If you like the songs in the background, please check out Autumn Burning on Facebook, Spotify, or you can go to iTunes and find it.
interdimensional aliens from aliens.
Okay. So now on to our social media questions. Now our first question comes from Kayla Hoover. I'm sure you guys seen these
I saw
already.
some of
I saw some. I didn't look at all of them.
Okay,
Yeah.
good. Okay, good. Okay, so Kayla Hoover has a question, and she comes from the social media. She's asking, are their heads really as big as they are in the movies? Seth, go ahead.
I mean, that's the first time that showed up was the Roswell, where supposedly some craft fell, and I've heard some weird accounts on that from even like military personnel and stuff that were there before the government got there, and they said they actually switched out the craft with the Project
balloon.
Mogul, which then they said was a weather balloon, even though Project Mogul was just, they were basically weather balloons but used for testing radioactivity. But there would have not really been much reason for them to even cover that up. So what they're saying is it was like a double cover up.
Yes.
Where because a lot of people that said they saw the picture of what they said they found, and of the people that were actually there said that's not what that was.
Yeah.
And they said they saw the bodies with small bodies, big heads, large almond-shaped eyes, which would be consistent to something humanoid that would live in a lower gravity environment. They may or may not be genetically similar to us. If some people speculate that it could be those creatures' DNA.
Did you
could have
say
been
lower
sliced.
or higher gravity?
Lower gravity?
Because if it's high gravity, that's not good physically.
Yeah,
Okay.
For the being.
Yeah, lower gravity would have to have, lower center of gravity.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Higher
Okay,
gra-
I was thinking
higher
the other
gravity would be
thing.
lower center.
So then, what do you think about that, Brandon?
Well, if they really do have large heads, then they must have come from a pretty small planet, because if animals are going to adapt to their environment as evolution suggests, then having a big head would not, only for intellectual purposes would it make any sense, but for physical purposes it would serve no benefit, because it's just going to make it harder for the body, the integrity of the body, to hold up that structure. So I don't think you're going to see very many aliens with very large heads.
It should be actually very muscular, right? Like,
Yeah.
well, just the anatomy of that.
Unless the head itself is very light. It might be big, but it could be
Oh,
light.
that's true.
True.
With
You never
know.
evolution, too, yeah.
Yeah, but assuming it's heavy, I don't think it seems very feasible.
And if they would almost have to come from a lower gravity environment. They would be almost helpless.
Yeah. They would be dead.
Yeah,
It's
true.
their technology
Unless
would be
the-
the only thing saving them.
Unless pressurized suits and stuff. So, I mean, those are pretty good claims that you got there. And, I mean, again, like the Roswell incident, yes, that is exactly where it came from. And there are eyewitness claims, I'm quoting that, of a lot, like apparently some article or some material out of the government is hiding, and they have a long list of all these types of different species of grays and whatnot.
I just have a quick question, though.
Yes.
What is the whole purpose of, let's say there are aliens, what is the purpose of the government trying to hide that from
Yeah.
us?
That's
a good question to ask.
That is a very good question. I think personally, and then I'll give it over to Seth. And so basically, when it comes to the government hiding it, the only possible reason why I would say they would hide it is because maybe possibly they want religion to thrive, and maybe they want to keep it away
Okay,
from other
yeah.
people. Maybe they don't want if they are interacting with America, they don't want other countries to know that these aliens exist, because then they might try to take the aliens and figure out more scientific studies on them and whatnot. Well, I mean, the intellectual being, obviously, if they get here, they are more than likely more technical than us, so they shouldn't have any problem getting away and being able to go to other countries. But yeah, the Roswell happening. Oh, Seth, you can answer that too.
Well, so you're saying why would they be hiding them from us?
Mhm.
My theory on this, Now, if they would come down and have have the technology they do, if they don't freak out, if we make it through that initial
That's
yeah,
true,
That's
I
one of
forgot
the
to-
problems I think
Mhm.
is
now,
Yeah.
if we make it through that, then they have to deal with the, hey, we have this crazy technology now that probably doesn't use fossil fuels. Now, our entire economy is built
True that.
on oil.
Yep.
And so keeping it secret from us and developing it behind closed doors, a lot. What I think, it's more of a good story idea. It's a plausible theory that they're waiting for us to go past the point of peak oil, to where, say especially if there's a lot of tension around the world,
Yeah.
then everyone's oil and gasoline become way too expensive to come by. It's just not even practical to run our tanks and planes and all that, and it would be like that for everyone. So, and say we reach that point, and then we're probably gonna end up going to about to go to war.
Just like
Or,
Halo.
about to
Yeah.
go to war over the last of the oil that we know of.
Mhm.
Now, that would be when everyone else, can't even afford to run all their equipment. That would be the point where they bust out this new technology that they've been keeping secret and making into weapons. Instead of giving everyone free energy, they, they would go and, suddenly no one else can afford to run tanks and planes, and they have this stuff that doesn't need fuel. They have the world by the balls. When once
Definitely.
that happens, when oil crashes, and if they would be saving that as their ace in the hole,
Yeah.
that would, at least that's what I think is a good, a plausible
Yes.
explanation why they would be keeping that from us.
Definitely. Now, Brandon, do you have anything to comment on your own question?
I actually, those are the reasons I actually think. I just wanted to ask what your guys' reasons
Okay,
were.
yeah.
But yeah, I actually totally agree with that.
Okay.
They may not be. I don't think they're true, but
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think
yeah,
it's
yeah,
definitely,
definitely,
a
yeah.
plausible.
And I was saying, that's one of
Yeah, there's a
several
bunch, but
scenarios.
yeah,
that could
it makes
come from
sense.
That. But
Definitely.
it's probably based on at least coming from oil, and if they let that out, then that would also mean you're gonna have a lot of pissed off people. They're like, you had this the whole time.
Yeah. Now, okay, Lauren Chambers, on to our next question. Lauren Chambers asks, if we meet aliens, would we have to worry about new diseases like when the Europeans came to America? Seth, go ahead.
Well, if we do, they would also have to worry about the same thing, unless they have advances in medical technology too, where they could
Definitely, yeah.
easily cure
Mhm.
anything, which they very well may.
Mhm. Could I say something about that real quick? And I think the reason why she brings up the Europeans comes to America. Well, I don't know if she knows this or not. But the Europeans the Europeans didn't have to worry about the Native Americans. The Native Americans had to worry about the Europeans, because the Europeans, being travelers and more they're less likely to catch diseases for
And all the
reasons.
livestock we had too. That
and
was
yeah,
their-
and they were more subjected to a lot of the diseases already. So all the diseases they get ended up being catastrophes for Native Americans. But continue. I'm sorry.
and I mean, and there actually is supposed depictions from ancient cultures of the gods that came down. And some of them actually look like a humanoid figure in some kind of environment
Yeah.
suit,
Mhm.
which would be
Oh, yeah,
what they
yeah.
would have. They would have to.
Or
do that
it could just
going
be
down.
folklore, but I mean, you never know.
I mean, it just seems weird that they would make some of the things that they show. It
Yeah,
looks
like, why would they
very
make
much
it-
like yeah.
So, Brandon, what do you think on this?
Well, we have to assume first that those aliens actually have disease-causing materials,
True.
and that if there were viruses or something like that, we would have to assume that they would be able to affect humans or animals or something like that. So I think it'd be best if we met through radio
I know
rather
what
than
you- yeah,
physical,
yeah.
like
Definitely,
because-
definitely. Yeah, and I mean, yeah. Again, they're more likely to be immune to their diseases.
Or
and
maybe our
whatnot.
atmosphere is poisonous to
and
them.
then-
Maybe that's why.
Yeah,
they're all-
that's very
yeah.
true.
I mean, which would mean theirs probably would be to us too.
Yeah.
So-
unless
yeah.
we're special somehow. That could give us a-
Yeah, really. But they would, yeah. So, on to our next question. Kelsey Byrne asks, could they help us? Seth, go ahead.
And yeah, obviously with the
That is,
technology they have.
if they are or maybe we find an alien instead of them finding us.
I mean, there's other supposed stories of them actually crashing on. I forget what the people were called, but in China, there's a story where some people crashed in some sort of craft and actually ended up staying on Earth and even intermarrying with humans that were there. And there's even pictures of this tribe of people that they look weird. They don't look quite like normal humans. There's only a few. There's only a few known main pictures of these people that were. I mean, they would have been a few generations in of the supposed interbreeding, but I mean, but in that case, they would have been stranded here, so they wouldn't have had that much to offer, other than what they could salvage. But something, if they contacted us, they could, and possibly already have given us this technology.
Definitely. So, and Brandon, do you have anything to say about them helping us?
Assuming they respect us as intellectual beings, I think they might want to, but if they treat us like we look at ants, I don't think they would. But
They might just give us some stuff just to see what happens.
yeah, they might treat us as guinea pigs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, I'm going to reiterate this question a little bit more. What if we find them on another planet and they're not really too intellectual? Could they help us if they're not too intellectual? Go ahead, Seth.
I mean, if, like you're saying, if they're roughly on our level and have just kind of been blindly, like, looking around through space, all wondering the same thing, I don't know, maybe if we were on, like, an equal plane, maybe
Yeah.
they're,
Science.
we could help them, they could help us, we might have different understandings of different areas of science.
Exactly. Yeah, that's a good point. Brandon, what about you? What do you think?
I'll agree with that. I have no comment.
All right. So Corey Emhart, she asks, would they be super stealth like in Signs, or in your face douche like War of the Worlds? And should I make a foil hat out of non-stick foil, or the cheap kind that makes food seem like foil magnets? Go ahead, Seth.
Okay, so if the prevailing theory is true, they're probably more stealth and possibly have already infiltrated our government. They may even, or we may be almost like a big experiment to them, or they're just kind of keeping an eye on us and seeing how we go, because we're at a critical point in our evolution here, where we could either, we're kind of reaching a point where technology is going up exponentially, but we're also using up resources. We're reaching a point where we're either gonna go extinct or transcend closer to their level.
What about War of the
But-
Worlds like?
That I don't think. I think they would be watching us and know that we have nukes. If they, if we give them,
We've got nukes.
if they know if we're backed into a corner, then we might just, say, all right, no one gets it. We basically, we're just gonna flip the table. Just like, all right, the whole thing's a wasteland.
What
No
about
one
foil
gets it.
hats? Do you think
Foil
they should
hats comes from the HARP project, which is a real thing that actually can beam radio signals directly into your head. There are people who believe that they are targeted individuals. Most of them, if not all of them, are probably just crazy.
do
But,
that? Just like the other religions.
apparently, but this technology does exist, and they could do it if they wanted to. But having a
I can't
having
believe
a conductor having a conductor like aluminum can actually block that signal and stop them from messing with your head.
So telepathy, very much.
Pretty much.
Mind control?
And,
Mind control, yeah,
maybe
sure.
I'm not sure if it's. I think they have the capability for that, but I don't know if it's at that level yet. But yeah, that's apparently there is something to the tinfoil hats that actually can block those
Yeah.
Signals. That,
I've never even heard of that till now.
It's to not keep them from like either not reading your mind or mind control
Okay.
or anything like that.
Yeah, I mean, it block because sometimes there's people that claim that they just send them basically just random stuff to, especially if they're people that believe that they're onto something. It's basically, it makes it so they can't get anything done. They're trying to, do research or whatever, and there's constantly, they might just start blaring Megadeth into their head.
That would be awesome.
I wouldn't mind. I wouldn't
Listen
mind
to
concerts.
Iron Maiden. That one is specifically for
But,
Brandon there.
But yeah, the non-stick or that shouldn't really matter as long as you as
I
long as
don't
you-
know.
As long as you have a conductor to
What if
interfere with the radio signal going into your head.
What if it's by magnets? Nobody understands madness. That must be God. All right, Brandon, what do you think?
What was the question again?
Tinfoil hats can make it so God doesn't hear your prayers.
Ooh, I like that.
What was the question again?
Okay, so basically, would they be super stealth-like or in-your-face douche-like, like in World? Excuse me, I had to burp.
Yeah, I know what the question is.
Okay.
Are they stealthy? Well, you mean like, let's say, invisible? Like they
Sure,
can,
I mean,
without like no
At the very
radar
least,
architecture,
trying to be discreet.
discreet.
Well, I
it
think
seems
what-
as though they've been very discreet because we have very few accounts of people actually seeing them.
I think
So-
what she means, like, have you ever watched Signs?
No.
Basically, they're like they can actually disappear, like you said, invisible, and they can blend into their environment almost, like
Maybe
almost
they
like
can
Maybe they
chameleon.
can turn into humans.
It could
Almost
be with
like a chameleon.
Maybe light bending technology, you could possibly do that.
Yeah, sure. And I'm sorry I'm interjecting here, but we've come up with some materials like with fiber optics and whatnot, where we do bend the light around the person, so it looks like they're almost completely invisible. Mostly similar to Halo and Ghost Recon Future Soldier, where like you can still see them, you can see they're there. It's just really
It
difficult.
distorts, kind
Yes.
of, but-
Yes, but the problem is, and the reason why we apparently don't use this now, the government could be hiding this because of top secret information purposes, and we don't want them to know our weaponology. But with
Making that
you
up.
can't you can't see outside of the fiber optics. You would need some kind of special contact lens or some kind of goggles.
Well,
So
I'll
there
just
would
say-
just be some eyes floating there.
Yes,
like it's
actually,
distorting.
yes.
I'll just answer by this. Well, if there are aliens and they have infiltrated our government, then they must be discreet and not in our face. So that's the
Definitely.
conclusion you have to draw, I think. That
What
is the
about
case.
like War of the Worlds? Do you think they would be like that? Anything like War of the Worlds?
If they were if it was like Dragon Ball Z and you have, you know,
9,000.
if they're like, planet conquerors, then
Definitely.
I guess it depends on what kind of aliens or what kind of beings they are.
And I mean, and we're not even limiting this to if one exists, probably a lot of them exist. So there may be some.
so a lot of
that
diversity,
would-
probably.
There might be some space Vikings that.
All
And
right.
then we might have the ones that have infiltrated the government, more like the space white people.
Yeah.
They're
And,
the ninja aliens.
so
They
do you
just get in and
think?
start pulling the strings from behind the scenes.
So Brandon, do you think that we have to worry about telepathy or anything like that? Like with foil?
Well, even if it was, would we be able to prove it?
Yeah.
That's the problem.
Yeah, exactly. I
We
mean,
don't know if it's happening or not.
Yeah, I don't think it's likely that telepathy or telekinesis or anything like that could be possible. Though, I mean, you can't really say that because magnetism, and that's their point, is that
The-
non-stick magnet.
Going from going from just one mind to another, that is a stretch. I don't know if it's completely impossible, but like the technology does exist just to beam signals into someone's head.
All right. So, that's a good point. So it could be evolution. It could be just a scientific discovery that they have. All right. So on to our next question. Danny Gowdy asks, "Aren't we all just aliens?" LOL. Go ahead, Seth.
Well, I mean, probably with the theory that we may have, somehow, at the very least, been tampered with. I mean, I think you have the stories of, the forbidden fruit in the Garden of Eden, Pandora's box, Prometheus and fire. It's like, we've been pushed to this point where it seems like there was just some sort of crazy leap from the primitive caveman types to actually starting to innovate our own technology to the point where it's almost thrown off the balance of nature. And I think a lot of those stories are almost allegorical to something that happened, whether we did it ourselves or whether an outside force did it. But we became too intelligent for our own good, where we've actually paralyzed our own evolution and have to go through technology, and our physical evolution is just taking a completely different path that isn't really helping us much.
To the question, are we aliens? Well, if there are other aliens, then we must be aliens to them. So
that
right there.
Yeah, that's very true.
That.
That is very true. And Mexicans are aliens. And Mexicans are aliens too. So
of course.
And they're not just any aliens; they're the illegal kind.
Yeah, they're illegal.
Yeah.
They're not supposed to be here. Even the ones that have green cards.
Even though they're humans like us.
All right, so Dan Yoder asks, and I reiterated this question because he had some crazy stuff here. Dan Yoder asks, why do aliens probe? Seth, go ahead.
I don't know how much truth there is to that whole thing. I mean, it would just kind of come from if people are being abducted, and like maybe, like you were saying, if maybe we're almost like an exhibit to them, and they're just kind of keeping an eye on us. Maybe once in a while they take some, just do some experiments, test how. I mean, I've heard some people that I know firsthand accounts. Like I know one guy that has a little scar in his leg, where it just looks like. He said it was there just overnight, and it was almost like perfectly healed scar tissue, but it just looks like a little piece of flesh kind of near his shin just got like scooped out. And he's also had, I don't remember if it was around the same time, but there was a time where he was going to a function, some church function with his family when he was a kid, and they ended up, when they got there, it was like 11 at night. Because at some point they stopped and they saw some lights above their, above their car when they were on the way there, and and then they kind of, oh, must be nothing, and kept going, and they, they got there and they had lost like 3 hours of time.
Yeah.
And so yeah, like I said, they showed up at like 11 o'clock. What? And apparently he even was trying to say. To talk to his parents about it, like, hey, what was that? And they just kind of would deny that anything out of the ordinary happened. They were just kind of like, no, we just ran like...
They were shit-faced drunk. They just didn't want to admit it because they were underage at the time. Just kidding, okay?
But, yeah, I think probing, I don't know. They could maybe, if they're getting some kind of gut bacteria sample, but that would just be one of many possible, just taking a little tissue and different like fluid samples, whatever.
Definitely. Brandon?
Well, if there are aliens and they are probing, I think it might be for trying to replicate another intelligent creature-like being who can maybe
Mhm.
serve as the working class for their planet.
Sure.
So
So they
that's
could
just
clone
an idea.
it almost.
Yeah, they
stem
come
cells.
here and clone.
Which is why
they-
we
they-
should research stem cells so we can take that and use it against
Yeah.
aliens. Damn, they're probing.
No, we should take their stems.
That's what I'm saying.
As long as they're not anal probing like Cartman.
All right.
Satellite.
Those are very good answers, and actually, that's a good note to leave off on that question, because it brings us to our next question, which is from T.J. Johnson. I reiterated this question to make it more fit with what was going on. So she said, "You say they had good bedside manners whilst probing people."
Wait,
Sorry.
good what manners?
Good bedside manners. Seth, go ahead.
I don't know. In accounts that I've heard of, just
More than likely not.
supposed first-hand accounts, people have said that sometimes they'll say there's actually multiple species on one ship, and the Greys, the ones with the big heads, are almost like the ones that kind of actually deal with the people, and they said they're actually very gentle and friendly, and while the other ones might be more like more like commanding officers or
Mhm.
whatever, engineers around the ship. But
Definitely.
some of them are supposedly more friendly than others, particularly the ones that are supposed
Ooh,
to.
I like
particularly
that
the ones-
tushy.
But particularly the ones that are supposed to
Sexual harassment.
actually be dealing with humans, if this even happens.
All right, so Brandon, go ahead.
Good bedside manners. The hell kind of question is that?
I think she was mostly joking, but I had to put that joke in there.
Yeah, that's
All right,
I
let's
can't
go
take that
on.
serious. I'm sorry.
Let's go on. I think if they were intellectual enough, they would probably be like, well, as a species, I don't want to be treated that way, so I'll at least be sexy to them. Or I'll ask them, can I touch your tushy first?
Make it consensual.
And then they give them anesthesia so they don't remember it. This one comes from my dad, Bruce Blazer. He says it's kind of, are they green? Go ahead, Seth.
Are they green?
Are they green?
Actually, most people describe at least the classic ones as gray.
Yes. Very
and
true.
a lot of times they're just called the Greys.
Yes, I actually said that earlier.
I
in
don't
the episode.
know any plausible accounts that I've heard that has ever described them as green. I've heard some that actually describe much more tall, almost similar to the Greys, but taller, skinnier, and sometimes even described as being almost translucent, which could either be like a interdimensional being, or it could be some form of a holographic communication that they can just beam down from a ship.
So basically, kind of like those aliens on that one planet in Star Wars, that really watery, stormy
yeah.
planet. Those real tall things.
Maybe something like that. I think one of them. I think sometimes they've been described as having blonde hair too, or golden, long golden hair.
Interesting.
Or some that are described are just completely hairless.
All right, Brandon, what do you think about
I doubt they're a green in the sense that it's like an ectoplasm kind of thing.
that? Yeah.
Yeah, I think what the whole idea of having a green alien is just a marketing kind of thing. Like back in the day,
Definitely,
when
yeah.
the idea of alien movies was
Little
and
green
it's
men.
Yeah.
Well, and
Why
it's-
were they green in the first place?
and when the
Like, what-
idea of aliens was in its infancy in entertainment and stuff, I think it was just one of those. It was one of the first, colors that represented an alien, and it just kind of I think it caught on.
Yeah,
Just
So
definitely.
something
it's-
that was
Definitely,
giving
yeah.
an obvious cue.
Yeah.
But this is not something from our world.
Yeah.
And, I mean, I guess they could definitely be green, but
I'm not saying they
it's
couldn't,
just-
but yeah, they
yeah,
could.
It's just that we commonly relate it to green because it's just tradition. So this next person asks 3 questions, and we'll try to get them all in one shot so we can move on here to the end. So Jen Eagle asks, how old are aliens, and how long do they live? Second, do they have new technology that we never knew about? Third, I heard about a pregnant woman getting abducted by them and come back to Earth without being pregnant. Do they really take the babies? And if so, what do they do with them? Go ahead.
Okay, was the first one like how old did they get, or
How long? Yeah, how old are aliens, and how long do they live?
we have no
Yeah,
way
that's
of
it.
knowing anything
The
about.
first
Okay.
question is just you can't answer that.
Yeah, definitely. Second one, do they have new technology that we never knew about?
Probably. I mean, that's been a lot of the topic of our
Yes,
conversation.
definitely.
yeah.
3, I heard something about a pregnant
Okay,
woman.
that a lot of cases like that could very well be just someone's cover story that didn't want to tell mom and dad that they had an abortion, or maybe or like didn't want to tell them that they got pregnant, that blame the aliens for it. there could be some actual cases, like not gonna rule it out. There could be some weird stuff that's been done with experiments on human fetuses with them, but
Stem cell
again,
research.
a lot of you're gonna to find anything like that, you're gonna have to wade through a lot of bullshit stories.
Yeah, definitely.
No doubt.
Brandon, what do you think about all those?
I think the story itself is a load of shit.
Just all of those questions.
Well, the first one you can't answer. It's impossible. Until we establish contact with them in English or some other language. Or, what was the second question? One.
The technology. Listen to the rest of the podcast.
I'll just reiterate what I said earlier. It just goes back to probability. If there are a bunch of aliens, there are going to be a bunch with a very small amount of technology, and there's going to be a bunch with a lot of complex technology. So, but the story about the thing I love about these stories is that they never happen in public places. They always happen out in the woods. And so that's why I don't believe them.
Well, that would also be a good strategy for them if they're gonna do it.
They've also,
true.
I mean, there's been witnesses apparently saying that they've seen crazy lights over Phoenix. However, you could always relate it to maybe it's a U.S. aircraft.
You never. But I understand that. It's just It just seems it goes so far away from anything I can logically process or rationalize. So,
I mean, they're great. They're great questions. They're very good questions. It's just the
something
thing
we
is
can't answer right now.
Yeah.
And I mean, even the existence of aliens, we can't really. We can only provide possibilities through mathematical.
So basically, I think that if they found us, obviously they have way better technology
Yes.
than us, and they could definitely, So that's the answer to the second question. But if we find them, likely we're on the same level, or they're less. They're
Or especially
inferior.
if we just find a planet that may not even have what we classify as intelligent life. We might just find a planet that might have all kinds of crazy ecosystems and stuff.
Yeah,
but
definitely,
There might
yeah.
be anything not any more intelligent than like a dog or a dolphin.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And then moving on to interesting statements, which there's only one interesting statement that I found out of all of these, and it actually comes from my dad, believe it. He's actually got some good philosophy and stuff. It's interesting to communicate with him about this kind of topic. But he said, the only proven alien spacecraft was ours landing on Mars.
I saw that on Facebook.
So
that would have to assume that there are Martians that witnessed that. So
Because that would be extraterrestrial.
I mean,
to
technically,
them.
we are extraterrestrials to the Martian planet itself, but yeah, technically we are aliens in a sense. But
So if we land on Mars and we start living on Mars, would we be considered Martians?
Yes.
No, because
Maybe if you were born there.
What if you were
in
born
in a technical legal way, maybe, but in a
scientific
scientific
understanding,
way, humans.
But then again-
humans, to our knowledge, are only happen on Earth. So, in essence, we
I
would
see
still
what
have to
you're
be
saying.
Earthlings.
because we've
What-
evolved on
What
Earth.
if the environment on Mars, say if we actually did colonize it and generations later, the people were actually had adapted to be just
Then they
different?
would be Martians.
Yes.
Yeah,
Which that's actually
makes
actually
sense.
putting people on Mars long term is a lot more complicated than what most people think.
Yeah.
Because you have to deal with the magnetic field that
The
that's
soil is
messed up.
acidic too.
Yeah.
We would have to terraform it for generations
Oh, yeah.
beforehand, starting off with maybe putting some kind of mold or phytoplankton there to actually cycle the carbon dioxide
What if
atmosphere
we-
into oxygen, and then we would have and either repair its magnetic field or make an artificial one that can shield us from the sun's radiation. And then we also have to deal with, we don't know how, even though there's gravity there's lower gravity, and that could physiologically affect us.
Yeah,
in
What
we
if-
long
become
term.
weaker, I think.
It's already bad for you to even be in zero gravity for even just a short
Yeah,
amount
it
of
just
time.
deteriorates your body because
Yeah.
it becomes so used to that your muscles aren't subjected to the same amount of force as they once were, so you become this big fat blob.
Plus, they could also
What if-
make their own gravitational
Yeah, that's
field
true.
there.
What if we put tardigrades on Mars, and we left it there for millions or billions of years?
Probably.
Do you think that they could evolve into something crazy?
Well, you almost have to have more than one organism together that could actually feed off of each
Intermingle?
other, because it would be hard to take
Because
just one organism.
what you're saying, because-
they would keep going, because there has to be
multiple.
it would have to have it has to have something to eat. It
Mhm.
has to.
I see.
Um,
Because now the new present day knowledge of how we understand evolution, we're thinking that it actually comes from multiple organisms rather than just one single-celled organism that evolved into humans eventually. So there's actually multiple, maybe possibly single-celled organisms that intermingled with each other.
that would have almost had to have
Mhm.
come up spontaneously
Mhm.
in
like a
in the
primordial
same
soup.
environment and
Mhm.
be able to interact with each other and make the first ecosystems.
Yes. So, Brandon, what do you think about everything that was discussed?
It's a lot of crazy shit. Yeah, I actually learned some today because there's a lot of stuff I didn't know about aliens because aliens aren't my forte. They used to be when I used to watch Ancient Aliens. I
Yeah.
used to believe all that shit.
Oh yeah, that
And
was fun stuff.
then I-
You have to watch what you're
Yeah, then I realized a lot of that stuff is like a lot of assumptions made off of very little evidence.
Well, it's really great to watch that movie or that the first 2 seasons
Mhm.
because anything after that it starts going.
They started
They're
making-
really grasping at straws.
Mhm.
They started making shit. Yeah, they
Mhm.
started making shit up after the second season.
Yeah,
I
the
haven't
first
even seen
season
much
was
beyond the second season.
It-
Really.
the
it- well-
first season is really good. The
It
second
became. This is
season-
how it became such a popular show, and then they
Mhm.
started making stuff up and making all these crazy assumptions.
Yeah.
And people were like, "There's no."
Which sucks because it completely discredits everything else that they've said. Like
yeah, exactly.
before that.
That's why you don't watch those.
But I have a book that was written by Philip Coppens that he was one of the guys on that show, and he even in his thing he says he's considered a believer by skeptics and a skeptic by believers, because he does a pretty good job actually of just taking the evidence and drawing what conclusions those lead him to. And there's some where he says he says at the very least there's just evidence of advanced civilizations that we're not that we don't really know about, but he says it's possible that they had been given information by extraterrestrials, but towards the end he seems like he leans more towards the hyperdimensional theory when he talks about Terence McKenna and those and the shamanic theories.
All right. So I guess Brandon, do you have anything else to conclude?
I think we got everything pretty well.
Okay.
I can't think of anything else much more to say, but
Awesome. Okay. I guess that concludes our podcast. And again, this is Eudaimonia Podcast. Thank you for listening, and goodbye.